You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to the Successful Screenwriter Podcast, where we discuss anything and everything screenwriting. Here we interview successful screenwriters and filmmakers to find out just what it takes to make it in the industry. Welcome to the podcast. All right, we have on some awesome guests today. We have on Jordon Hodges and Chris Faulisi. Jordon is the writer of The Shade Shepherd and also an actor. And Chris is a director and a writer on The Shade Shepherd. Thanks for being on, guys.
Thank you for having us.
All right. So I got to watch this film. I got to do a little sneak preview thing, and I really thought it was pretty fun. It was pretty interesting, well written. And I guess you guys are getting some pretty cool distribution on it, right?
We're getting out there.
Okay. Lionsgate. All right, so you guys got it going through Lionsgate. That's pretty awesome. That's not easy to do. So it's available on Amazon. But before I get into that, I wanted to get your origin stories, like how you guys met, how things kind of get starting. I know this isn't your first gig together.
Yeah, no, it's not. You want to give that story, Jord?
Yeah, I was on the corner of La Brea and Santa Monica. You know, cliche as that sounds now that, I'm in the Midwest, but it was outside the Target, I think, you know, in the little food court. And a friend of ours, Will, he was an actor in Faulisi's directorial debut, Proper Violence. And if you hadn't seen that film, it's great. It has Randy Spence, who plays my brother in The Shade Shepherd.
Oh, cool.
And we talked, I liked him. And then we did this like 43-minute pilot / short film. He just DP'd it. He was a kid. He owned the red, you know what I mean? He was smart and loved the way he made that film look. And then I was gearing up for a feature that I led as an actor, wrote, produced, called Sandcastles, and brought Chris on as a DP. Randy, who plays my brother in this, plays my uncle in that. And Faulisi knocked it out of the park. And I knew he was a director and a writer. And I pitched him over and over on different treatments and stories, and finally got him on the hook for this one.
All right. So what about this guy drew you to him, Chris? Obviously, he liked you because he thought you're pretty talented and you had a red camera. And I'm sure it was more than that.
Yeah.
But what was going on? Like you guys merged, you melded, you know, you kind of liked his work, or did you read some of his stuff?
With, in the beginning, it was via our friend Will, so you trust friends of friends, and It was a pretty cool project. I was just working on it as a DP. This was early when I early on in moving to LA looking for work, and then over the course of that and working on Sandcastles was shot in Indiana, and I think me and Jordan became a lot better friends just through working on that movie together. I got to meet his family, got to just see where he was from, and we've been friends ever since. And he's been pitching me on a bunch of things.
Well, that is something in the industry, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you find somebody that you really kind of connect with and enjoy working with, you find projects to work together. I mean, even Michael Bay, he's got his crew and they all stick together and they all go from film to film. And I mean, I think it's really important to show that this is a relationship business. You guys are both represent that.
So we're very different, I think, in a lot of ways. He's got a mad scientist vibe about him, which I was really attracted to. Like he's very eccentric. But I feel like when we come together on films, we're very similar. Like he complements the things that I lack, and vice versa. Okay. Chris spent all day with me on my wedding day. Like, we're buddies,
That's cool.
So, it is important.
No, I think it's important to work with somebody that kind of fills in your gaps, and brings their voice to the project, because that adds that level of completeness that it needs. And from what I've understood, The Shade Shepherd was very much a group project. It wasn't all one guy. You guys kind of all came together and added your own voices to it. And that's kind of what made it really original, which I think is cool because it works. You can watch a lot of films and you can see when they start to go off the rails. I always lean over to my wife and I go, 3, 4, 5 writers at least. because you could tell it's a hot mess and the narrative doesn't make sense. But at the end of your film, I was like, one writer for sure, but it all came together and looked really, really good. And I was very happy with how that came out. And I say kudos to you guys. So I want to talk to you guys about working together as a writer-director.
Yeah. Well, obviously, since I, was a writer on this project, it's a little different than your normal relationship. But in a lot of ways, the way that I approach writing, I guess I am a writer. I don't really think of myself as a writer first.
Okay.
I write oftentimes on projects that I direct because I want to be that involved with the screenplay. And I think it all starts with the screenplay. But in a lot of ways, my process with writing is an extension of my directing process, I guess.
Okay.
So I like to work with a co-writer because it allows me to not go into that insane mode where it's just me and a blank page, and I can really struggle with that. And so
yeah,
it's one of the reasons I probably don't consider myself a writer primarily, because I can overthink things to the point where it's detrimental, but having someone there to talk back and forth with and to just go over things and to push me along when I need to actually get something out there is really important.
My experience working with directors is they're different. It's either they know exactly what they want or they don't know what they want until you show it to them. And it sounds like you're getting in there, getting your elbows dirty, and really being involved in the process is great. Jordan, since you guys are friends, you guys are buddies, I'm sure tension's flared, especially when you're working on a screenplay together. So what was it like working with a director, trying to kind of get this vision figured out on where you want to go? Because I'm sure you guys had different visions of where this thing was and different takes on characters. And what was your take on that?
Well, I went into it knowing that Chris was going to direct it, but he was going to write it with me. And he made a good point, that a blank page can drive him crazy. In our relationship, when we wrote, for the majority of the time, I was the one on the keys and he was the one on the couch, and we would have a conversation and I would just type as we were talking. Once we got to the end, we would pass the script back and forth and dive in, but we went down to, arguing about dialogue and things. But the thing about it, back to what I said about even a friendship, about some people, fill up gaps that you have in yourself.
Yeah.
Chris doesn't have a ton of bad ideas, in my perspective. And I hope that I don't have a ton of bad ideas in his perspective. You know what I mean? Like if we were faltering usually, then I felt for the most of the time the other would pick up the slack and figure it out. Faulisi had the idea with the thing at the end. I don't want to spoil it for somebody who hasn't watched it.
It's a good ending.
That happens. Yeah, thank you. And
it's a shot.
But that was Faulisi, and I helped, of course, evolve it and do the groundwork with him on it. But the origin was his idea. And then there was one time where the old home scene where the brothers are talking and they're kind of laying out their lives with each other. We were kind of stuck on that. We both made some attempts, and I just got honestly pretty drunk one night and wrote that scene. And I was like, I sent it off, and I was like, and I woke up the next morning. I'm going oh,
you were full Hemingway.
I'm an idiot. That was a mistake. Yeah, and he liked it. It wasn't perfect, but he responded to it, and so it was kind of a give and take, a seesaw. Really, we've never. Yeah.
Well, I would say I think the one thing you really need when you're working as writer director together is trust. You have to be able to trust the other person's vision, and then you have to be able to trust the other person's voice. And I find ego is the thing that really gets in the way. And if you're able, and it's kind of like what you guys did, if you're able to take the project, put the project first, put your ego aside, that's when something special happens. All right, Chris. So when you got a drunken draft from Jordan, how is that looking? Was it singing to you?
Well, it wasn't perfect. I think there were a few typos in there, but But it actually, if I remember correctly, George, that wasn't at Old Home. That was post Old Home. That was the conversation in the bowling alley where the character's actually drunk. So because of that, it's kind of a method writing thing. And
right, you're right.
That's why it started to work. Obviously, I think that scene ended up, like that draft was too long. We had to change a lot of things, but there's definitely some dialogue from what he wrote, just getting drunk and putting it down there, like that migrated its way all the way to the film. So I like having things put in front of me and then dissecting them. That for me is the easier part than, starting from scratch. And I think that's one of the ways that he and I complement each other, is that he's very confident and will just sort of like plow forward at any given moment. And I mean, there was times where it was like, hey, do you want to take a stab at this? And, I don't know if you did it on this film at all, but besides like the first draft, but in other projects we had collaborated on, he can write a draft of a screenplay in like 3 or 4 days. He can just barrel through it.
Yeah, just get through it.
And that's, not a screenplay we'd be ready to shoot, but it gives us something there. Right. So if we got stuck, sometimes he would just take a stab, even if it's just a section or a scene, write something down really quickly, and then now we're looking at something.
Get the bones down there and parse through it.
Right. And knowing
that.
Yeah, knowing that it sucked the first draft. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I was well aware that it wasn't good.
Right.
This podcast is brought to you by TheSuccessfulScreenwriter.com, where you can find instructional books, videos, courses, and screenplays of Hollywood's biggest hits to download. As an added bonus, visit www.TheSuccessfulScreenwriter.com to download the Guide for Every Screenwriter for free. Yes, free. Available exclusively at TheSuccessfulScreenwriter.com. Now, back to our show.
All right, so we were talking about confidence, and I think confidence is key when it comes to screenwriting. Now, I'm not a director, but I can only assume on set you want to be pretty confident when you're in the chair calling some shots. And I think coming through as confident is important. And I always tell students, if they're working with people and they're nervous, say, fake it till you make it. So Chris, Jordan, I mean, have you always had that kind of a confidence when it comes to the work, or did you have to grow into it?
I'm not confident at all. So I think what you're saying is really important, but I'm absolutely not a confident person. And I think that's part of my process.
Yeah.
But I can be confident. What I have like grown into and hopefully will continue to grow into is that I'm confident in that lack of confidence. I see filmmaking as inherently collaborative. I don't really buy into the auteur theory too much. I just
no.
I mean, I believe that there's some validity. It's interesting to talk about. There's definitely and that's nothing to say against directors that they're not artists and creating a work.
Right.
But I think that films are made by more than one person. Unless you are setting up the camera, doing literally everything yourself and acting in every role, there's other people involved. And I like to approach things in a really collaborative way. So I think, at least for me, I don't know is one of the strongest answers. And if you can be confident in saying when you don't know something, you can open yourself up to better ideas.
That is so eloquently put and incredibly humble, sir. And I believe you 100%, but I'm sure you put people at ease on set. Jordan, what is your take on confidence? Now, you're an actor, so there's a bit of cheating here.
I'm confident because I feel like I know the difference between bad and good.
Okay.
I wouldn't say I'm confident by creating, like, there's always that nerve thing to get an original good idea.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But once that good idea that past that threshold, then I become confident. So I guess I'm confident in my discernment of what's bad and good, in my opinion.
You're a man of taste. You're a man of distinctive taste. All right. No, that's good. But that takes experience to get there. You have to develop it. You have to cultivate it. So I think that's important. Now I want to ask you guys something, because Chris sparked a question in me. He talked about being the auteur director. So there's always an argument there. Are you creating art to create art, or are you creating art to sell? And I'd love to get your opinions on that, because you've created Shade Shepherd. Shade Shepherd is a cool film. It's getting out there. You're marketing it. But it definitely has some artistic components to it, for sure. Definitely. And the way the cinematography is, the way the story is told, the characters, the way they bring it together. It's definitely, it's not an art house film. It's not a big action blockbuster, but I think it definitely hits in a niche there. And I'd love to get your guys' take on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it's going to be something that people watch, there has to be an element of art in it. I don't think, even a big superhero movie, which may be sort of mass produced and is definitely commercial.
Yeah.
If it didn't have some level of art to it, I don't think it would have the audience. And I think there have to be people that care, working on these projects. But yeah, there's always that, especially if you're just writing screenplays and you want someone else to go and produce them, I think you have to have a foot in both worlds in order to really do something with it.
I agree. What do you got, Jordan? What do you think?
I agree with Faulisi. To me, it's that kind of, I don't know, age-old battle. It's like you want people to see it, but you want to hold your artistic merit, you know?
Yeah.
And for me, something changed around probably when I was making Sandcastle. So it's been 8 years or something, 7. And I'm okay with popping up in a movie once every 4 to 5 years.
Yeah.
So I think at that point, it's probably just artistic, my stories, and it's, my voice or how I want to tell it, or a part of my voice or whatever. But then you want people to see it too. So the Shade Shepherd, I guess, was a bit more flary with the 80s thing and stuff than Castles was. That was just a straight drama, the hardest thing possible to sell. I didn't do it for that. I self-funded half of it.
Okay.
And I just did that as that was my education.
Right. The Shade Shepherd has a distinctive 80s theme to it, with some pretty sick opening credits and some pretty boss 80s synth music going, which I think was original score, right?
Yeah.
Now, how late in the game did the 80s theme come to developing this script? Was it what you wanted to do right away? Did it come later out of practicality reasons? Or is it, because 80s and 90s are coming back. There's no question. You're seeing more cinema because guys our age, right? We're making movies now. So of course we're going to get nostalgic, just like, when our parents, they were making films about, stuff in the 50s and 60s. So, eventually you're going to see films 20, 30 years from now, and they're going to be talking about TikTok. So what was the inspiration here?
So it did come fairly early in the process, but it wasn't at the beginning.
Okay.
The first draft was a much shorter draft, and it was kind of a rough thing that Jordan used really just to pitch to me. But once we developed the ending, and that was when I think we started to figure out what we were going to do with the script overall. I think it was that same draft. The idea of making it in the 80s came about because there's a lot of logistical things that it solves, but it was also something we thought was really interesting. And there would just be technology and plot points that would be necessitated by technology that they were just not a part of the story that we wanted to tell. And they took us away from the character relationships as well as the theming that we were interested in. Right. And so because we liked it, we were both born in the 80s, and we had been working on an 80s film before this one, which didn't end up happening. So we were kind of in that mood to do something in the 80s. It started as one of those ideas we just floated, and then we ran with it because we felt like it could work.
So the film is about two guys, they're brothers, and they're hiking through the woods because one's on the run from the law. And then they hijinks ensue, and it's a drama. It's about two brothers that save themselves. They save themselves through saving each other, really. When you found the 80s theme, because when you could write something like this, when you can write an 80s theme, you can write you into a corner. Were you able to kind of come together and it made the process easier?
Yeah, I felt like once we chose we were going the 80s route as a writer, it was a relief off, like it was a burden off my shoulders. But as a producer, the weight evened out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. Did it blow up the budget a bit?
Well, you just had to be smarter. You had to, the locations became so much more harder to find. The clothing, everything kind of. And like you said, the 80s were coming back a little bit. 80s isn't too far away. We did a lot of basement shopping in parents' houses and stuff. And, but as a writer, it was a relief because it, like Faulisi touched on, it got rid of the problems we were running out in front of with tech and things.
Yeah.
It's like, we're on the run, this adventure film. Are we going to get like hit by a drone or something?
Yeah, cell phones. No, it makes sense, but I think it works too because if you look at the time period back then, it wasn't unusual for people to go on a walkabout like that.
Exactly, and it's like, there's a point where I call my wife in the film and we're distanced, and it's like, well, wouldn't he just be texting her the whole time?
Yeah, exactly. No, it works. Writing for a period piece, that's what this is. Writing for a period piece. I always warn students I work with, you got to be careful, it blows up the budget. But it sounds like you guys were able to do it on an indie budget without it blowing up too much, which actually is really good to know.
It's small town stuff, man. And that's why I never say never, but I don't see myself ever shooting something in a city. You know? Like, that's why I came to my hometown for both Sandcastles and the Shade Shepherd, because you have so many relationships here, where you grew up, whether you know it or not. People, it's a kid from here, from this high school. Yeah. Like, they're going to open the door for you a little bit. And that's where treasures are sometimes. So.
Well, even that bowling alley set, there's a cool bowling alley set I thought was really great. And I couldn't tell if that was all set dressing or if the bowling alley actually just looked like that.
The bowling alley looked like it.
Really?
The reason that
Wow.
So we actually had scouted that for that other project because that film was set in the 80s and it had a bowling alley in it. And we loved this bowling alley. So when we were looking for a place they could break into, I was like, what about that bowling alley?
Oh,
so
man.
it was written to, I think you have to be very careful about blowing up the budget when you go period. But there is a unique scenario when, I'm the director, he's the producer. So we're aware of what we can and can't do. This didn't really change our budget because we didn't get more money because it was an 80s film, but we felt like we could move around our resources and pull it off. Also because it's set in the woods, much of it, we didn't need to worry about everything. Like if there were a bunch of large street scenes, you think about the amount of 80s cars that we would have needed.
Exactly.
It's really difficult. So,
Well, Faulisi, on that 80s thing with streets, he would go through and he kind of taught himself how to take things out of images. And he would remove trash cans and things that most people wouldn't notice, but it bothered him. I mean, there's a scene where we're driving a blue van and we get pulled over. And it was 2 years off, I think, or 3 years, the year. It was like a 92 instead of an 89. So Faulisi decided to change the entire front end in post.
That's awesome.
Of the van. And he sent it to me and I watched it and I didn't notice anything different. That's how good it was.
Wow. I mean, I never caught it. I'm usually pretty good at that stuff.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Look at you. You're getting in there. We'll fix it post.
Yeah.
Well, that was, the day of, we couldn't get a period van. So I did shoot it, coverage wise. I shot it where it was like, well, maybe we can edit out the front of the van, but that felt bad in the edit. So it was like, no, we have to see the whole thing. And it was killing me. So I learned some VFX skills.
Oh man, I love your dedication. It's fantastic. I mean, that's what elevates a project in a script is attention to detail like that. It's what separates you from the pack. And obviously it's working for you guys.
We are releasing an app. And we talked about that before, but
we talked about that. We talked about that on the Break It Down show, which is a great show that I have a privilege of being a guest on. And I want people to hear about it on the Successful Screenwriter. And I'll tell you why, because there's always interesting ways to market something. And, what you've got going on blows my mind with marketing The Shade Shepherd.
Yeah, so it started out as a crazy idea. We premiered the film at Newport, and it was towards the end of that festival, and maybe it was just because our festival premiere was over,
right?
And I was feeling like, oh, maybe I'm done here. I decided to take on a crazy project, but I was like, wouldn't it be cool if we had a way to, like, you know, if we had an app? If any other of these films had an app, I'd be like, what the hell is this? I'm going to download it just to see what the competition is doing. And then I'd forget about it. So if 2 years later, I still have the same phone, or a year later, whenever the movie comes out, I get a push notification that says, hey, you can buy The Shade Shepherd. I might be so impressed that I'd go buy it. But it was kind of, that was the idea for it. But now obviously with COVID and our festival run being over, because we weren't sure if we were going to be able to do it on a legal sense, but it all worked out. And so, I decided to teach myself to code and use Unity and do pixel art.
Amazing.
Because I'm a psycho. But I think it could be an interesting way to promote a film, and it makes, you know, large films have tie-in apps or games. So it's the second screen experience. That's what they like to term it. I just love the fact that you're bringing that into the indie market, because you just don't see it. You know, most people are like, would you like a sticker? and you're like, download the app of the film. It's so awesome. Hey guys, I wanted to say thank you for coming on this show. I'm glad we got to talk about a writer and a director coming together and kind of getting those unique perspectives. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.